Now let's welcome in Pittsburgh head coach Jeff Capel to the 24/7 Sports Social Distance Series. Jeff, how you doing, man?
Doing well, man. How you doing?
I am doing great. I appreciate the time and you jumping on here with me. I want to start here. It's obviously been a tough time in our country over the last couple months, and you've been quite outspoken about social injustice and racial issues in our country. What's been your message to your team to how to navigate this whole thing?
Yeah, well, it's been brought to light, I would say, more in the past few months. These issues are not new issues.
Right.
And unfortunately, these are things that I've had to talk to my team about for a while. As a black coach coaching young black men, um, it's my responsibility as a leader to teach them more about basketball. And certainly with everything that happened in Minnesota, the two events, right before that with Ahmaud Arbery and Amy Cooper, and certainly finishing with George Floyd, that's kind of brought it to light to everyone. I think there are a lot of factors of why that is to be. I think certainly the pandemic, there's really nothing else to distract. And I think it's opened people's eyes. My message, to my team has been, it's interesting because we compare it to basketball, just from the standpoint of building a program
Right.
of how much you need each other in order to fix this, in order to combat this, in order to overcome this, in order to beat this. We need each other, and we have to do it together. And people have to understand that this is not right, and you have to be willing and be brave enough to speak out against injustice of any kind. And the other thing I've talked to our guys about is their voice. They are leaders in their own right, even though they may not understand it yet. They may not understand the power that they have,
For sure.
but they are leaders. And this is bigger than basketball. And so to use their voice to be knowledgeable, if it's something that they're passionate about, speak on it.
I know that there's been some talk among ACC programs about potentially playing some HBCU schools. What are some of the other ways that you think the basketball community can really help promote change within this climate?
Yeah, well, obviously one of the biggest things right now, and you see it all around the country, is voting.
Right.
And I think it's more than that. I think it's understanding the voting process. Look, there people, my grandparents and older, my parents and older, there are people that fought for us, black people, and even women to have the right to vote, to have these basic civil rights to be able to do that. And so not only exercising your right to vote, but being educated on the voting process, being educated on the candidates, not just doing something because you see someone tweet about it or you see
Right.
someone put something out about it on Instagram. Being knowledgeable. Evan, one of the things I've talked to my teams about, and this goes back to when I was 27 and I was the coach at VCU, you need to see yourself more than just a basketball player. So many times these young guys, these young people, that's how they see themselves. That's how I saw myself when I was 18, 19 years old. You have to understand basketball is just a part of what you do.
Right.
And so the voting part is big. Education, I think, is huge. I think it's really huge. I think, listen, every kid that I coach and my colleagues in this profession, all these kids want to be professional basketball players. And we want to do everything we can to help them achieve their dream. The reality is the majority of them are not. And so how do you go on and have an impact? How do you use your platform? How do you become educated, to do that? And so I think, getting guys, certainly in our sport, in the summers, doing some internships within the athletic department.
Right.
Because I think one of the ways you can have great change is getting more people of color, getting more women in leadership positions in college athletics and also in universities. There are very few women athletic directors and people of color that are athletic directors, and there are even fewer college presidents. I think getting young people to understand that and teaching them that and getting them in positions of power, I think that will cause drastic change.
Have you had any conversations with the administrators at whether it be at your school or others about that very thing?
I have. It's something I talk to our people here about. Our university, our athletic department actually does a very good job. Even before any of this, we have a summer internship program that they encourage student athletes to get involved with. And they try to get one student athlete from each sport. And they try to teach them administrative things, things that could help them down the road if they have an interest in
Right.
perhaps, getting into college athletics in an administrative role.
Got it. Well, let's switch gears to your time at Pittsburgh. You took over the program 2 years ago. It seems like it's flown by already. Uh, this is your third school as a head coach. What's been different about this opportunity at Pittsburgh when you compare it to when you took over at VCU, which you were obviously very young, and then when you took over at Oklahoma?
Yeah, I look at it as kind of a mixture of both of them. When I took over at VCU, I was 27. I had only been in the coaching profession for 2 years, but I had been there for a year as an assistant. So right away when I took over, I knew exactly what we needed to change. Now there's a challenge into trying to do that,
Right.
into executing that, but I knew what we needed to happen. I was very fortunate there in that I was left some really good players. And there were several, especially in the backcourt, but there was one guy in particular, in Dominique Jones, that really made my life easy. I coached him for 2 years as a head coach. He was player of the year as a senior, but he's probably one of the most low maintenance, great players. And he was a great player that I coached.
Yeah.
So there, what we had to do was that we had to change the culture. And during my 4 years as head coach at VCU, the thing that I was most proud of, and we won a lot, the thing that I was most proud of is that we did that. We changed the culture. That led to Oklahoma. When I went there, that one was really, really challenging because it was a different part of the country
Right.
than I had ever been, a different region to recruit, certainly going from a mid-major to a high major program and a high major program that had success. The culture was there. I took over for Kelvin Sampson, who's a very, very good coach, and he left the culture of toughness, of fighting, of defense, physicality, and rebounding. There we had to add talent. We
Yeah.
had to continue to add talent. This one is a mixture of both because there really wasn't a culture, and we greatly had to improve the talent. One of the things that I'm pleased with as we enter our third year is that I think we've done that from a talent standpoint, and I think we've done that from a culture standpoint. Now we have to mesh them all together, and now we have to add winning to that.
Right. I wanted to circle back to something you said, and you mentioned taking over VCU at such a young age, and you obviously had a lot of success when you did take over. What advice do you have for those first year head coaches that are coming in with a lack of experience, but in this day and age, you're expected to have success and have it quickly? What advice do you have for coaches that are coming up in that type of role?
Yeah, my biggest thing is to be you. That's one of the things I've learned throughout my journey. And my journey has been, there have been highs, there have been lows, there's been adversity, which we're all going to face in this profession. But I think one of the biggest things is that you have to be you and you have to be comfortable with you. You can't try to emulate someone else. You can't try to copy the way someone else does it. You have to be authentic to you. Sometimes that takes a while for a person to figure out who they are. Um, I know it took me a while, just being completely honest.
Right.
But I think being you, being authentic, and trusting that you are good enough,
Yeah.
that you don't have to try to be someone else.
Well, one of the cool things about your job at Pittsburgh is you get to work alongside your brother. You guys are extremely close. What's that been like getting to work with him every day?
It's been really cool. When I took the job here, obviously I knew it was a massive rebuild. And, that was 2 years ago. The climate that was going on in college basketball with the whole FBI stuff
Mhm.
and things like that, it was imperative for me, number one, to get people as assistants, as a staff that were really, really good.
Yep.
I knew here that development was going to be huge. And so that was a criteria for me. But then also for me as a head coach, Evan, I wanted people that I could trust.
Right.
Um, Especially in this profession and the climate that we're in right now. There's no person in the world that I trust more than my brother. He's qualified. He's been a head coach. being away from it for a little bit, being in TV. He got to see this league. He covered the ACC for the ACC. I'm sorry, for Raycom and for ESPN. Um, he was a great player in high school, was a really good player in college. And so it was a no-brainer for me. And he's been really good for us, for our program, for the guys that we have the honor to coach. And then for me, it's been really cool, man. Like our kids get to be around each other. Our kids are, he has 3 kids. I have 3 kids. And so just spending that time every day, especially coming off of our father's death 3 years ago, has been really cool.
When's the last time you guys have played one-on-one?
When I was the head coach at VCU, he beat me, and we haven't played since. He was still playing. Maybe he was professional. I think he was a pro by then. And
Right.
I was either in my first or second year as head coach, and I still thought I could beat him. And he kicked me pretty good, man. And we haven't played since.
What about your team this year? What do you like about the makeup of this group?
I'm excited because I know that we have more talent than we've had since we've been here. This will be the first year where we have a full roster. We'll have 13 scholarship guys. That's the first time that's happened. We'll have more size. We'll actually look like an ACC team, like a high major team as far as size and length. We'll be more athletic. We'll obviously have more quality depth. One of the things, though, is just, and I'm sure everyone's going through this, we haven't seen them. And so, I'm anxious to see how it would look. I'm hopeful that we get to see how it looks here pretty soon. But I know we'll have more talent. We've tried to be very specific with how we recruited. I'm really excited about this class that we have.
Yeah.
Evan, we'll have 7 new guys. We'll have 6 new incoming guys, and then we'll have a kid that sat out last year that's eligible to play. And so I'm really, really excited about that.
I think one thing just around the country that's probably not getting talked about enough, and you're certainly not alone in this boat, but all the schools that are bringing in a large number of newcomers, you usually utilize that summer to get them with the strength and conditioning program, get them stronger. I think it's something that everyone's going to have to deal with, but I think it's certainly going to impact freshmen and newcomers in terms of how quickly they're going to be ready.
Big time, man. And that's something we've talked about as a staff with our strength and conditioning coach. We're hopeful to get our guys back this Sunday and Monday.
Wow.
And then we'll have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And then after that, starting July 20th, we'll get a chance to start working with them, hopefully, if everything goes to plan.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've talked to our guys about is that we have to be slow. There's going to be everyone is anxious. You're anxious to get to work. You're anxious to make up for missed time. My thing is that we just have to be ready by November. And we have to really be slow with how we do this. The very first thing for us is to get our guys in shape.
Yeah.
That's my priority right away. Like you mentioned, for our new guys, is teaching them how to lift, teaching them how to work, teaching them these things, the proper techniques so we don't get injuries. And then hopefully, man, sometime in August or September, we can start getting to the basketball stuff. But the first part, because like you said, we're going to miss a lot. If everything was normal right now, we would have had our whole team here on the 22nd.
Yeah.
And we would have started right away with our program and things like that. That's not going to be until July 20th right now. So you're talking about almost a month later. But that's okay. The main thing is for us to be healthy, to be safe. And then, as long as we're ready by November, we'll be ready to go.
For sure. A big picture question. You've been a head coach at 3 different schools. You've won a national championship at Duke. You had a run to the Elite Eight where your guy went number 1 in the draft, Blake Griffin. You've accomplished a lot over your career. What's been the most gratifying moment or the most special moment to you during your coaching career?
Yeah, it's there are a lot. Certainly the national championship in 2015 with that group, man, because it was such an amazing and special group, and how that recruiting class came together, the leadership of Quinn Cook and how he bought in, that middle group of guys of Matt Jones, Emil Jefferson, Marshall Plumlee. It was certainly a special group. Having a chance to coach, recruit and coach a kid, Blake Griffin, and to see him become the National Player of the Year, and the #1 pick. And, that team was really, really good. But for me, to be completely honest with you, it's probably my second year at VCU when we won the league and won the conference tournament. And I say that back then in the CAA, which was the league VCU was in back then, it really didn't matter what you did in the regular season. It mattered those 3 days in
Right.
March. And for that group, to believe in me as a young guy, and to see that come together and to see those fans at VCU, man, it was a really, really good program in the 80s. Took a little bit of a dip, and then to see it kind of turn like that and to see that magic. And then also, look, selfishly for me, it was like validation. I heard everything that people said
Right.
when I got that job at 27. VCU fans, my profession, like I heard all of that stuff. And, in year 2, to be able to win the regular season, to win the conference tournament, to get to the NCAA tournament, that's probably for me where I felt, what, like I really and truly belong in this. Like I deserve to be in this position.
That's awesome. You mentioned Quinn Cook. I'm glad you did. He's literally one of my favorite high school players I've ever covered. Loved him as a player, but this is a guy that obviously had a big time leadership role at Duke. Helped him win a national championship, and then he goes to the G League and works his way up to being an NBA player. I think he's one of the coolest stories, and it's not talked about that much. From your perspective, you coached him. I know you're close with him. This is a guy that I think a lot of high school kids should be looking up to because of the route that he took and where he is now.
Evan, you're exactly right. I mean, he is one of my favorite people in this world. And, when you look at it, he had as good a high school career as you could have. DeMatha, Oak Hill, McDonald's All-American, Jordan Brand, starting point guard on the USA team, the U17 team. He is as liked and loved of a player as I've ever been around.
Wow.
Came to Duke, came in with an injury, had a really up and down freshman year, was all conference as a sophomore on a team that went to the Elite Eight, an up and down junior year. And then all of a sudden we're bringing in at Duke, going to his senior year, Tyus Jones,
Right.
who's, one of the top point guards in the country. And you're bringing in this group. And Quinn was so focused on winning. At that program at Duke, you're judged by banners. And at Duke, they don't put up, like if you make the NCAA tournament, the only banners that are put up is if you win a championship, an ACC championship, you get to a Final Four, which means you won a regional championship, or you win the whole thing.
Right.
And he had gone through 3 years and it never, he didn't have a banner. I've never seen a guy buy in like he did.
Wow.
And he led that group and, national champion, All-American, all conference as a senior, second leading scorer, and then to go undrafted with, all of those accolades and to persevere. Like he knew he was good enough to play in the league,
Right.
but he had to go through stuff. And I'll never forget, man, we were at Peach Jam and I had taken Coach K to the airport and Quinn called me. And I can't remember what summer this was. I think it was the summer of 2016, 17, I can't remember. But I remember he called me and he was like, look, big brother, like I need advice. Like, what should I do? I've been here. I've been killing these dudes in the G League. I've gotten a couple call-ups. Man, should I go overseas? Should I just go get money? Should I give up on it?
Right.
And for him not to do that, to believe in himself, to bet to bet on himself and to see what's happened. He's a great story for any young person in high school that has a dream of playing in the NBA. Such an amazing story.
Yeah, no, an awesome role model. I'll leave you with this one before we go. I know you're a wine guy. What's the go-to right now?
Well, it depends on if I'm drinking by myself, which maybe is a sign of a problem. I'm a huge Camus guy.
Okay.
I love any of the Camus, but especially the Special Select. But if I'm having wine with my wife loves Rumbauer Zinfandel.
Yeah.
And so we'll do that. We'll start out, look, we're in a pandemic, man, so it's not much to do. Early in the afternoon, we'll sit on the front porch and, we may have some white, some Chardonnay, or some Prosecco. And then as we get to dinner, we'll get to the red.
A whole array of selections.
A whole array. Depends on kind of the mood that we're in.
Jeff, man, I appreciate you doing this.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.